the spreadsheet.
Indeed. Commissioner Spies, before we went for tea, we're talking about an amount of 2 billion, and you prepared a spreadsheet to demonstrate how that amount came out. The spreadsheet, it's on file 4, the small one again, at page 963. So 963 will be where you deal with a total of 2 billion, and the actual document starts at 956.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Yes, can you speak to that? Please.
I think 2 billion is an understatement. I mean, this is almost 3 billion. Is it not 2.9 billion?
That's correct, Chair.
Commissioner, this I drawn up when we started with the tender. I created the spreadsheet to keep track of everything right from the beginning. So on the left-hand side, the columns is the 22 companies. And then I had to go back in history with the assistance of the previous staff so that I can get the original amounts which was paid. And then it lists the companies per month, how much was paid to the companies. However, I must, right from the point out, go say that amount is related to the watchman services, because even though in March 25, when this allegation of increase of ad hoc services came up, I even draw graphs from these to see where's the spike, that I can actually notice what happened if there was a spike at all. And I couldn't get any spike in it immediately from that. So to me, this graph just shows the total that's been paid for the watchman services, the 2.9 monthly deployment at fixed sites. The watchman services, what I've discovered in the meantime, is paid from the requesting department's vote numbers. So if there's water and sanitation department or energy department or whichever department asks for ad hoc watchman services, the funding is made available from their budget and is not reflected on us as TMPD and in the payments that is reflected here.
Commissioner Spies, is it then correct when you look at this spreadsheet, the amounts there are fairly average and consistent? Would it be then correct to at least postulate that if there was any room for manipulation, it will have to fall under the ad hoc services as compared to the watchman services? Do you have any comment to that?
The watchman services, the deployment, it very slightly differ. It could be that there's 1 or 2 guards added over a period of 4 to 5 months and then reduced again with 1 or 2 guards. So the payments stay consistent through the years. There's very, very little movement there in the watchman services. And that's in the analysis as well that I performed on this. That's why it sounded to me very strange and fishy that there's these large amounts being paid to security without us picking it up. And only then, when we start to delve into this deeper and deeper, we actually discovered that the fluctuations actually came from the ad hoc services that was assigned on the sideline.
Commissioner Spies, can you then pick it up from the next paragraph where you deal with the financial obligations, paragraph 34 of the statement?
At the end of June, which is the end of our financial year, it was very clear that our budget needs an upliftment of 91 million rand because we've exceeded our budget and we could not pay for the services because of these sideline ad hoc services. So there was then, by the Chief of Police, a specific letter that was drafted in the department to say that the service providers for the period of May to June 2025 is that they must be paid, and it's recommended by the Chief of Police has actually created a letter to the CFO, who is Mr. Gareth Manisi, and then it was approved by the City Manager, Mr. Metler, that the upliftment of the funds be authorized so that the service providers could be paid in the financial year. And that letter is attached to my reference as RS210, but it's obviously not me that actually signed or drafted it. It was drafted and done by the Deputy Chief Dlamini in the Support and Finance Admin, and then signed off by the Chief of Police as recommended and requested, and the CFO to recommend it, and approved by the City Manager.
Chair, I believe that this letter is quite important, this upliftment letter of funds. Can Mr. Spies go to it? I need you to read it into the record. That letter appears, it's still on file 4, page 964. And perhaps for the record, then read paragraph 1, 2, 3, and the last paragraph of that letter.
The subject of the letter is upliftment of funds on security services, watchman services. The Tshwane Metro Police Department wishes to seek approval for the upliftment of funds on security services to the amount of 91 million rand for 24-25 financial year, to settle invoices for security services rendered for the period of May and June 25. The city operates a hybrid security model that integrates both in-source security guards and contracted private security companies. This approach was adopted following a court ruling in August 21, which directed the city to contract 22 private security service providers for a 3-year period. This contracted services began the services with the city on 1 March 22, and the contract expired on 28 February 25. An approved extension of the current contract was set to expire on the 30th of June 25. The BAC approved a further extension of the security services for a period of 3 months from 1 July to 30 September 25. During the financial year, the city approved and made a budget available of 307,129,702 million for provision of security services to protect the property, assets and personnel of the city of Tshwane. And during the budget adjustment period, an additional 350 million was allocated to this service as the initial budget allocated was in deficit. The adjusted budget was calculated and determined based on our monthly expenditure on the normal security services contract, and it meant that the city would be able to honor its financial contractual obligations until the end of financial year if only normal security services were honored. The budget for watchman services is centralized with the TMPD. The client departments are allowed to procure ad hoc security services that's based on their security needs and following the need assessment. The above mentioned provision is to be followed provided that such approved is made subject to the availability of funds. The cost thereof should be borne by the client department for these additional services. And the client department's water and sanitation department approved additional security services but did not make funds available to enable the TMPD to settle the invoices. The understanding was that the client department would identify savings within their budget and transfer funds to the TMPD vote. However, that did not materialize. This resulted in the TMPD having to pay for the ad hoc services rendered from the normal contract budget, thereby creating a deficit of 57 million for the month of June, and a further 34 million rand, total of 91 million rand, will be required for the months of May and June to cover for the ad hoc services that would have been rendered. This is then recommended by Commissioner Faru as the Chief of Police, and it was recommended by Mr. Manisi as the Chief Financial Officer, and he had a comment that he added to say that the department, to ensure that mechanisms are put in place to ensure that expenditures within the limits of the budget in the 25-26 financial year, and it was then approved by the City Manager, Mr. Metler, on the 2nd July 2025.
Commissioner Spies, is there anything that you want to add or comment on that request for an upliftment of that 91 million?
The budget initially was created, if you based it on the previous financial year, the initial budget allocated was half of what was normally allocated. And that's why in the adjustment budget, the budget was adjusted to make sure that it is comparable with the previous financial year and the projected services. However, when the watchman services was started to being paid and the ad hoc suddenly came in January, February and March, the department processed those ad hoc services against our budget and not against the client department budget where it originated from. And that made that by the end of April, we were already depleted on our own budget. And then in May and June, we obviously didn't have the funds from our own budget to pay it. And that's why the upliftment was then stated to say, but the regional department should have paid it. And the money should be uplifted so that it can actually be transferred, because the departments between one another should have done the transfer into one another's, do a journal and what they call a GL, which is a general ledger vote number to do the accounting of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Spies. The next paragraph, it identifies a person by the name of Malaji. And the next paragraph, they have significant relevance to him. Can you take us through that and also explain who is Mr. Malaji? Where does he fall in a chain of command within the TMPD? Thank you.
Director Malaji is, and I just have to go slightly back into the history, is that the section that dealt with the security tender in the 2016-27 process was then called the Asset Protection Services Unit, which was a unit within the division specialized policing services. That unit was relocated to the city manager's office in 2019 from TMPD. So there was an instruction that this unit are relocated to the city manager's office, and that project managers on the various award letters was then indicating that Director Malaji and Mr. Nava Pillay is, in terms of the award letters, managing the security contract, TMPD 2 2016-17. And the whole period from 2019, from the start of the tender, everything was then done from this APS unit in the city manager's office. In July 24, this unit was then relocated back to Tshwane Metro Police with effect from 1 July 2024. And it was placed then under the new division of which I'm now the divisional head, Asset Protection and Security Services. And part of my portfolio is that this division of Asset Protection and Security Services have then this section within me, which is the Security Services and Guarding section. And Director Malaji is appointed as the Director for Security and Guarding Services, and he reports directly to me. The deployment, the monitoring of the security companies, and the invoicing processes fall directly under his auspices. He signs off on it, he does the deployment of it, and once he signs off it and do the deployment, he obviously, as the sectional head, he submits it directly to the Deputy Chief Support and Administration, which falls under the control of Deputy Commissioner Umashi Dlamini. And however, Director Malaji has been suspended by Commissioner Faro on recommendation from myself since the 4th of July due to consequence management being implemented against him. And at the moment, Colonel Reginald Mashlangu is acting in his stead formally as the Director Security and Guarding Services. And that matter of Malaji is still ongoing. It's sub judice. It started as the disciplinary hearing, but it's not yet concluded.
Commissioner Spies, just to assist the Commission, how has been your relationship with Director Malaji since you arrived in March 2025? The professional relationship, I mean.
it's been a very difficult relationship because I was appointed, and in my very first week, I've set up an appointment or meeting with all my subordinates to introduce myself to them. And during the meeting, the discussions was held, and everyone introduced himself to me and what their function is so that I understand who they are. And he elected to speak last. And when he then started to speak, he opened the discussion completely disrespectful towards me, stating that, yeah, he's got a higher rank than me because he is a commissioned officer and I'm not a commissioned officer. So I then called him into my office after the meeting to discuss with him, to say, but he doesn't understand the concept of a commissioned officer. A commissioned officer in the South African Police Services Act is the South African Police Services Office, who has been commissioned and signed off by the President because of his appointment as an officer. But that is when you resign from the South African Police Service, it becomes a ceremonial rank that if you're not fired, you can keep the ceremonial rank, but you have no powers, no function whatsoever. It's only a ceremonial rank. And he was, prior to his appointment in the city of Tshwane, he was in the South African Police Service. So, and I understood that his rank was either captain or colonel. And then we had a discussion about that, and I stated to him, it's true that I'm not a commissioned officer, because I'm not in the South African Police Service. We are in the Metro Police. And he must make a choice how he wants to be addressed by me. Does he want to be addressed as a captain or a colonel, or as a director? Because he's a director appointed, and I will address him as director, or else I can address him as a colonel, which is a much lower equivalent rank to that. And he then stated, no, he's a director. So we left it at that. But whenever I give him instructions, he would actively disobey my instructions, and he would not do whatever I have informed him to do. And it came to a head when, and that's part of his disciplinary hearing, where there's a forensic investigation that's being done into breaches at our city, and also of declarations that has not been fully declared in terms of a senior management declarations. And that's why he was then placed on suspension, and a disciplinary matter has been initiated against him, and that is still carrying on to date.
And then at paragraph 39, when you say all deployment and monitoring of security companies, would that include the deployment of ad hoc or security, or what do you mean by that?
That is his function. So as per the appointment letter and in the SLA, I think in the SLA it's under point 9 of the SLA, but in the appointment letter where it states that Director Malaji and Nava Pillay is responsible for the management of this contract, and then in the SLA it states specifically his position as Director Security Services. He's responsible for deployment. He must therefore, if there's a necessity for a deployment, he makes the decision to deploy security officers.
Thank you, Commissioner. The next topic.
Does that mean, Commissioner Spies, that any questions about whether there had been deployment and therefore justifying an invoice from a service provider and the payment of that invoice are matters that Mr. Director Malaji would be accountable, must explain? He's the person to explain that. Is that what you mean in paragraph 39?
Correct, Commissioner. The actual deployment will then obviously be followed by an invoice. And the invoice process, the service provider would submit the invoice to the office. The Asset Protection Security Services officers will deal with a combination and making up the evidence pack that must go to Finance Department, and that will proceed through as an invoice to Director Malaji, will sign off on the invoice, that he certified that the work was conducted. And from him, it will then go to the TMPD finance section that will do the uploading into the finance system and do the bureaucracy process at the back end of that. I must state, however, and I think it's my very next portion, is that where we will touch on that when we get to it, is that the process has been slightly changed for that, is that we do not allow ad hoc services now. We've introduced a new procedure from between the 12th of March, which initiated from the 1st of April, where the client departments would now fill in a form that has been designed by us, and this form will then have to be signed off with a motivation and full explanation why they would need ad hoc guards. It will go to their group head, which is the head of their department, and it will, if the group head has a cluster head, because some of the departments are clustered together with a chief operating officer, it will also have to be signed off by the chief operating officer that they actually need this extra ad guards, and that they make provision that we can use their funding and budget. It will then come through to us as a department, to me specifically. I will then instruct a different section within the asset protection and security services than the guarding services to go and do a minimum security risk assessment based on this application. And based on what the risk assessment then prescribed, we will then instruct the guarding side that you may now proceed to deploy ad hoc guards. So between the 12th of March and the 1st of April, this new process was instituted to control the ad hoc guards in a much better method.
When you say the 1st of April, you mean 2026?
2025.
Oh, I see.
It's not yet.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spies, the next topic, you deal with the stoppage of this ad hoc security services. And in that paragraph, take us through that paragraph and then you make reference to an email after that. Perhaps that's with the paragraph and then we'll go to the annexure to that.
Maybe before you do that, again, something that I wanted to check with Mr. Musikidi. This evidence about Director Malaji, on the face of it, it's quite benign when you look at the statement, and I'm concerned that we may miss the significance of it because of how you're handling it, if it's going to come up, if it is of particular, or he is of particular significance along the way.
Yes, Commissioner Baloyi, the very next subtopic deals with that. Remember, the witness canvassed the nature of the relationship and the chain of command and the instructions given. And we will speak to that when he talks about the stoppage of these ad hoc services and what transpired and what the role of Mr. Malaji then, or how he behaved to that instruction.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner. Commissioner Spies, I think we can then continue from paragraph 41.
On Thursday, the 12th of March, and I have previously mentioned this specific date, just after 4 o'clock the afternoon, I was sent an email that originated from Deputy Commissioner Umasi Dlamini. And in this email, he stated that the deployment of ad hoc guards had grown exponentially. There were an extra 30 sites that were added in January 25, and then a further 6 sites were added in February 25, and we are using our own budget and will run short of funding. And I've attached the email then as RS11, and there were 2 attachments as well to this email. The one listed a deployment of sites for January 2025, and the other one listed the sites for February 2025.
Chair, I would just, so the reference there, it's RS211, 1 and 11.2. I would just need to guide the commissioners to the relevant pages. We will have to jump to file 2 of 4. Then you'll find this email on page 337. So the chair will see that the labeling would say, the old label will say RS 25.1, but we have cross-referenced that to be paragraph RS 211. As reflected in
You
the
said
statement.
page 3 what?
337.
337.
Yes.
Are you saying the tab should be renumbered?
We will renumber the tabs.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Spies, can you then speak to the document on 337?
That is the email that I'm referring to from Umashi Dlamini, and it's dated Wednesday, 12 March, 1604. It's sent to me, and the Chief of Police is CC'd, Deputy Commissioner Boleis, Brigadier Nkomo as the Acting Deputy Chief Specialized Services, Deputy Commissioner Nomsa and Slapo, Mr. Veli and Wandule, Jetro Seleka, and Priscilla Radiokana, Chukuru Malachi, Reginald Mashlangu, and Colonel Elvis Marislava is CC'd, and then there's attachment with 2 sheets, and that's January and February 25 listed sites. Wherein Commissioner Dlamini then stated to me, Deputy Commissioner, please peruse the attached ad hoc security invoice. In particular, note that the ad hoc is increasing exponentially with the increase in allocated sites. The current spending trend will inadvertently result in the depletion of funds before the financial year with the potential of overspending on the associated GL. It's observed that at least 30 additional sites were added in January, totaling 37. By February 25, 6 more sites were added for ad hoc duties. The implications with this additions is that the spending consumes the finances budget for the extension of the contract for additional 4 months. If this trend persists, the fear is that main contractual obligations will be at 0 budget before the end of the extended contractual period. You are advised to manage ad hoc duties and minimize new sites to ensure that funds are available before the commencement of the deployment, that you approve the deployment of additional new sites for control purposes. Further, that you explore the possibility of engaging the requesting sister department and to persuade them to engage the CFO to approve or make funds available for ad hoc duties. That upon approval and availability of the said funds, the necessary journal be made according so that our budget is not overburdened.
Now, Commissioner Spies, before we go to the annexures, at first glance, this email seems to be someone who's concerned about the increasing allocation in terms of the ad hoc services, and is concerned about the financial implications there too. What's your understanding of this email?
Initially, if you just look at it from the first 2 paragraphs, that's exactly what it looks like, as someone is concerned about it and he wants to make sure that we don't run out of money. However, with hindsight and sending it to me, there's a flurry of emails that originate from this within minutes from one another, where I send back to him an email requesting how was it historically handled, who managed it, because it must remember that I actually started the 2nd of March. I don't know why this process has been initiated. So I ask him what happens with this. As I ask him this, the Chief of Police came in between with the email to say, stop this, no additional budget will be made available. And then the discussion came back, and if you look then at the last one, this email is clearly someone who is setting me up to say that I must request for additional funding, because the last one is that I explore the possibility of engaging the requesting sister departments. So this email is actually putting a challenge and a problem that has been created, and now it says, but let's go to other departments to ask for funds. So this email looks to me like it's actually trying to get more funding and budget, and that's what I must actually start doing, is to get funding and budget for it.
Thank you. Can we then go to the annex charge that Mr. Umashi Lamini attaches to this email? And can you speak to that? That appears on the very next page, which is page 338.
This is only the one annexure, January security ad hoc on 338. There's also a February ad hoc one, but I can speak to the January one.
I will refer you to the February spreadsheet as well, which was inserted later on. I'll take you there. Let's speak to the one in January, as it is there.
So this list that Commissioner Dlamini then submitted to me, it listed the companies on the left-hand side, the sites where they have been deployed to, and then the amount, excluding and including VAT, that have to be paid to these service providers. The first two companies is Triotic Protection Services, who's been deployed to Klipgat water waste treatment works, and that listed for a few months, like October 24, November 24, December 24, and January 25. Then the next one for January is Mogalaghadi Security, which is listing the Refillware Reservoir, also for November, December, and January. And the total for those two companies is 2.8 million, and that looks very normal for an ad hoc. It's like 2 guards or 3 guards deployed to these sites. However, the third company in the ad hoc services is Gubis 85 Solution Security, which then lists a total of 37 deployments, which is the Rietvlei Nature Reserve, Rooiwal for long before, Rooiwal July 24, August 24, September 24, October 24, November, December 24, Rooiwal January 25, Zitubeni Reservoir and Pump Station, Waverley Reservoir, Valhalla Pump Station, Sunderland Pump Station, Soshanguve L Pump Station, Soshanguve DD Pump Station, Refillway and Rayton Pump Stations, Malkalneek, Ilardus Park, Karina, Brickfield, Brackfontein, Moroletta, Montana, Magalies, Roslyn Reservoir, Loulardia Pump Station, Klipkruisfontein, Klapperkop, Iskor, Low and High Reservoir, Hercules West Reservoir, Hercules East, Grootfontein Pump Station, Glenway 2, Glenway 1, Garsfontein, Florana, and Findlay. This also relates back to the previous list of payments that was actually made that I already testified to. And then February, even more sites were then added.
Your mic is off now.
Sorry, Commissioner, I hit it with a book.
Perhaps please repeat the last thing you said. Maybe it was the last sentence, I'm not sure.
This includes then a total of 37 sites for Gubis 85 Solutions. But the second attachment lists February, which added more sites, and which I could also then, I just don't know where it is in this one bundle.
I will help you find it. It's on file 4 or 4. So it's that smaller file. And you will need to go towards the end of that document at page 992.
Commissioner, on page 992 is then the February security ad hoc services, which again...
Commissioner, just wait for the commissioners to find their way.
We found it.
Thank you, Chair. You may proceed, Commissioner Spies.
Again, it listed the first two companies as Triotic Protection Services, which is still deployed to Klipgat wastewater, and then Mogalaghadi, which is still deployed to Refillware Reservoir for ad hoc. And then it lists Gubis 85 again for February, which is very similar in nature, except that there's now extra 6 sites, which brought the total then to 43, ending with Findlay Reservoir, and it's a total then listing of 14 million rand for Gubis.
Can you then, Commissioner Spies, when you look at these two annex charts, remember they are attached to an email by Mr. Umashi Dlamini. What do you make of them? What picture does it paint? Because both of them refers to 3 security companies and how work has been allocated to them in terms of the ad hoc committees, ad hoc services between the month of January and February. And remember, keep in mind that we have 22 companies on this tender. Now we are listed, or Mr. Umashi Dlamini makes reference to only 3 companies. But even on the picture painted by these 2 annexures, what is your fair view of
From that, it looks like the 2 companies initially has got a normal ad hoc that has been requested at specific 2 sites, but then it's as if there's favoritism towards Gubis 85 and that someone has deployed and assigned first 37 and then 43 only to Gubis, while there is 22 companies that it could be shared between. But it looks like it's been only assigned to Gubis, the majority of all the work, and it looks also that it is the water and sanitation department which causes this major increase in the ad hoc services.
What, according to you, could be a plausible explanation as to why so much work is directed towards one company, which is quite evident here? If any.
From my perspective, there is no plausible that it can, so much work can be directed to one company. The award, initial award, and the way the tender is run is that it's a fair treatment and it's fairly allocated between everyone. There should be no preferences of which company. It depends on which region. Some companies is specifically restricted, not by us per region, but because of their own deployment, because a smaller company and a larger company, it depends where they are based. And it would be extremely unfair for us to take, for instance, a company which is based in Sector 1 or Region 1, which is Soshanguve, Winternest area, and we deploy them, for instance, to Bronkhorstspruit, which is in Region 7. So the allocation of sites, wherever it's needed, is based on where the companies are based and where they are originating from. To assign, therefore, all the water, sanitation, pump station, reservoirs, it sounds highly illogical that it can only go to one company, because some of those pump stations, from obvious reading from that, you can see it is either in Garsfontein, which is Region 5, and Region 4 in the southern, and Region 2 and 1. So those stations are spread over, and it should have been allocated to other companies as well, depending who's closest to them.
Chair Ahmad.
Sorry. Can we, though, fairly say this long list indicates favoritism of Gubis 85 if we don't know the underlying facts, such as, do the other companies have the kind of personnel, the numbers, that would be able to meet these requests for ad hoc security, and the underlying facts that we would have to know first before we come to the conclusion that this indicates favoritism?
Commissioner, there is in every region, and the sites, I have got analysis of all the sites and all the companies that have been deployed. And there is, when you are in Region 7, which is the Bronkhorstspruit area, the companies there is not really deployed into Pretoria West, which is Region 3. So we do tend to deploy companies to where they are based and where their main basis of operation is. But when you look at what has happened here with Gubis, is that they've been deployed across the city. So even if you take just 1 or 2 sites, which is in Valhalla, versus in Garsfontein, which is on the opposite side of the city, it's one site. If you add a guard or 2 from a company which is already in the western side of the city, and you add 1 or 2 guards to them at a reservoir, versus in Garsfontein you add 1 or 2 guards. This deployment of guards is definitely favoritism towards one company, because it was assigned, everything from water was assigned to Gubis only.
Thank you, Commissioner Spies. I think you started speaking about a chain of emails, which we make reference to at paragraph 44. But before we get there, can we go through paragraph 42, 43, and then when we get to 44, we'll go back to those line of emails to give better context to what you are saying.
This email was sent after hours at 4:04. So when I received the email, I immediately replied to Commissioner Dlamini to say to him, but asking him in a paragraph, who has deployed this? What is the context? How has it historically been dealt with? The process, because he stated there that I must start controlling it and that. So I asked him, how was it historically dealt with, that he can answer me. I've sent that to him. At the very same time when I sent that to him, I sent to Director Malaji the email to say, the same email I forwarded to him, and he has already been CC'd in this email, but I sent it to Director Malaji as well to say, can you immediately draw up a report for me explaining how this process worked and how the deployment was done. And I gave him a deadline of, this is Wednesday, I gave him a deadline of Friday, that he have time during Thursday to complete this report and give feedback to me. And then at approximately 4:20, the Chief of Police, Commissioner Faru, also came in and saw this email, and she started to reply. And then there's a flurry of emails from her where she first stated, and I verbatim, but the emails is attached, where she stated 30 additional sites. I'm not approaching anyone to increase the budget. This is irregular. Ad hoc services must be stopped. And then immediately thereafter, she sent a second email to me to say that I must provide a report to her, I must investigate it, and I must also introduce a new process to manage and control this ad hoc services, because it's definitely irregular and she's not going to do a budget increase application for this. Every time that she sent the email, I obviously, because it's now critical and we're managing this, so I'm sending that emails then directly to Malaji as well and say, further to my first email, the chief instructed this report, please add this to your report. And then the final one where she says, stop all ad hoc services with immediate effect. I then send it to Malaji to say, as of tomorrow morning, because this is already after hours, as of tomorrow morning, stop the ad hoc, because guards that's already deployed at 6 o'clock the evening, they work a 12-hour shift system. You cannot, after hours in the middle of the night, say to someone, stop, the guard's already on site. So my instruction to Malaji was that the very next morning, stop the ad hoc services with immediate effect until a new process is actually implemented.
What does it mean, stop? Does it mean the site is left unguarded? Or your watchman section of appointments will look after that?
That's correct, Commissioner. The site will be left unguarded when we say stop the services, because immediately from all of that emails, it looks like it's an irregular deployment. It was done with no authorization, so we are actually doing, at that moment in my head, we're doing illegal work. And that must be immediately stopped. And he must write a report to me back as to why was this deployment necessary, where's the risk assessments that was conducted upon this, and what is the need that forced that we need to add this extra guards to us.
Thank you.
Sorry, my mic was off. Who deploys and who allocates work to a particular security company? Is it the TMPD or the client department?
It's TMPD.
It's TMPD.
In terms of the tender, the contract management of the tender is placed within TMPD, and the award letters and the SLA assigns this function to Director Malaji. He's the one who, in terms of the award letter and in terms of the SLA, is the Director Security. He must perform the function.
But does it mean that the client department makes a request to TMPD to say, we want you to allocate security guards at this reservoir or at this site?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spies, just to piggyback from Commissioner Baloi's question, and maybe use the words that have been commonly featured in this commission, is it practically possible, or in all instances, to immediately stop the ad hoc work that's already issued in all circumstances?
No, the immediate stop, as I stated earlier, if I say stop it now, and it's coming back to the word immediate, I said stop it immediately from tomorrow morning. So I cannot issue the instruction 4 o'clock in the afternoon to say stop now and then expect that by 5 o'clock or something it will be stopped. The night shift is already on its way, it's already starting to work, and they will only conclude the next morning. So I actually, in my email, I explained to him, stop this service by tomorrow morning, that the service will not continue then.
What does it mean, that kind of instruction? I assume that a purchase order, if things are done properly, from how I've understood you, a purchase order would have preceded a deployment decision. You now have a service provider who's sitting with a purchase order. What does it mean when you say stop immediately?
Commissioner, ad hoc services with a purchase order is to procure the services of ad hoc services. That can be, in terms of the SLA, it can be stopped anytime. It can be very quickly initiated and it can be very quickly stopped. So when the purchase order was created, it was for the ad hoc services. And when we give the instruction now, the ad hoc services stop. Parallel to this process, we already started with a process where we were redoing the minimum security risk assessments of all council sites, because the risk assessment was conducted in 2019 of the 1,087 sites. So when this actually started to take place, I already initiated the process where we started to do a reassessment of all sites. And part of those sites that has now been deployed, we started with those sites as well to say, why is security needed at all 1,087 sites? That risk assessment has been concluded. We actually have now way more sites, 1,251. But the fact that the ad hoc was started, it was started on a need, and there was I want to say openly today when I look back at it, there was a false need created. Because I also did look at what security, I've got another division or section within my division that looks at investigating loss control section that investigate breaches, that investigated any losses. And that section, when they do the statistics, they look back at trends analysis and what happened at specific sites or specific departments. And when I looked back at that, there was no increase in breaches or attacks on reservoirs or water pump stations. There was isolated incidents, at the most approximately 6 for that financial year. So there's on the one side, there's this ad hoc creation. On the other side, there's analysis of breaches that was conducted, which leads that there's no or very little breaches. There's no need for this. There's no risk assessment conducted before the time. And when this stopped immediate with the ad hoc, is that we immediately was already busy with risk assessments, that we place these sites in a first priority basis to do the risk assessments to determine it. And even to date, when we complete it, it's still not needed to have all of those sites actually protected in this serious manner of having guards. There's minimum security risk requirements, which is much more needed, which could include things like fences and burglar bars and alarm systems, which we are looking at, rather than deploying people to those sites at a massive cost to the city.
Thank you. Chair, one aspect I forgot to put on record. When we're dealing with those allocations of sites to Gubis for January and February, we have to run that list with the purchase orders that we saw earlier on, and obviously juxtaposed to the conversations that were happening at that relevant time. But I will not put that to this witness to connect the dots, but we need to put it there to say that we noted that from the record. Commissioner Spies, can we then go to the emails that you refer to give better context to what you were saying? In terms of the timelines, let's start at, so it's file 2 of 4 at page 342. So it's a bigger file, bigger of the file.
Page?
Yes, at 342. So you will guide us with the timelines there. I see at the bottom it starts at, so it's Wednesday, 12th of March, 2025 at 4:04:28 seconds p.m. That will be, can you start with that chain of exchange of emails?
Correct. This is the original email that I just testified about, is that it originates from Umashi Dlamini. And then at 16:07, which is 3 minutes later, I replied to all again to say to Commissioner Dlamini, who approve and mandate ad hoc security services? Who decide to give the instruction for this? And how is this process managed within the department historically? I must state that to date, I haven't received the answer on this email, even though I've asked the question. But then if you go from that email to the previous page, because it's obviously in chronological order, is that at 16:14, the Chief of Police then replied to us as Deputy Chiefs to say, dear DCs, 30 additional sites only for January 25, with exclamation marks. Who approved this, DC Bollhuis? And I must just pause here, how she's addressing this to DC Bollhuis, is that when the asset protection unit was relocated from the city manager's office to the Metro Police Department in 1 July 2024, the position that I'm now occupying was vacant. And I was only appointed in 1 March 2025. So for the period 1 July 24 to 28 February 25, Deputy Commissioner Bollhuis was assigned as caretaker for this division, and that's why she would address this to him. Then she goes on to say, I'm not signing off any documentation or requesting additional funds. We are currently in MACO. This is the mayoral committee. This will not be entertained. And DC Spies, please launch an investigation in this regard. And then in this email conversation, she obviously then added again an email to me to say, added to the below email, this behavior must stop as it will cause audit queries, which will not only affect the department, but the city as a whole. I'm not going to request additional budget for unauthorized ad hoc sites. I will request an investigation and consequence management. 2 reports must be drafted, the authorized ad hoc sites deployment and unauthorized ad hoc sites deployment. If we go then to page 340, she then issued at 4:22 an instruction to me, Deputy Commissioner Spies, please stop any ad hoc deployment until the correct procedure determined by you have been implemented, bearing in mind that there's no additional funding already. And then obviously I forward this whole conversation as and when it happened, I forward every portion to Director Malaji to say, and further to the ad hoc deployment of guards, stop the deployment of all ad hoc guards as with effect tomorrow morning.
And do we have a response to that email?
No, Director Malachi Commissioner Dlamini has never responded to me my question to date, and Director Malachi has also not responded to me at all. Even though I've asked that reports and everything, and that's part of why there's consequence management happening, which I cannot divulge more, but part of that is that, and I've stated that already, is I introduced a new procedure between the 12th of March and the 1st of April, in that we as a department created and designed a new application form, a new process flow, and we have submitted that process flow to it was then the acting COO, the Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Malaka, and between us we refined the process, and then up to eventually when on 1 April it was instituted as a new process for all ad hoc guards going forward, as I've already explained.
Commissioner Spies, before you go there, can you inform the Commission if your email to Mr. Malaji to stop the deployment, did it achieve the desired or intended purpose, as far as you can recall? Initially,
it didn't, and the understanding was that the deployment of ad hoc guards would be stopped. And we have in our department, we have every second week, we have a Monday budget meeting where we discuss the budget, and the staff from the CAPEX and the OPEX side will then present the current status of the budget to us. So when we got to the end of March and the first week of April to that budget meeting, it was indicated, but by then everyone already know that ad hoc guards were deployed in January and there's invoices that must be processed. And obviously January's invoices will only be submitted in February, it will only be paid in March. So when we hit the April meeting, we actually, the person from finance highlighted to us that we are exceeding this ad hoc guards that has been added. We must urgently resolve this. We then all indicated, but that's the January payments that's currently being affected. And we only stopped it on the 12th of March. So there will still be payments coming through for February and also then for the first portion of March. So this was then in the first week of May, it was again mentioned, and we are always making assumption that this is February's payments that is now being affected. And then in June, the same amount of payments came through, which March should have been a half payment and not a full payment again. I then went and I said to Director Malaji in person, I said to him, I have instructed you to stop the security guards. Why is there still invoices coming through for the same full amount of that? And then he indicated to me, but you know, he's not going to do the stop of it if it's not in writing from me. And I said, but I've sent you an email. And my email instruction and my verbal instruction that I followed up with you, that is, you should have stopped it. I then took the effort on myself I actually write a letter on a letterhead where I send it to Gubis 85 specifically to say, as of now, you stop this. This was dated on the 24th of June. I sent a letter to them to say, stop the service with immediate effect on 30 June, not immediate. I'm going to stop using the word immediate. I said, stop the service with effect 30 June, because their contract at that stage in the parallel process, their contract has been extended from February 28 BAC resolution with 4 months to 30 June. So their contract will in any case stop 30 June. So I said to them, as with effect from 1st of July, the services must be stopped. That is on the 24th of June that I've sent that letter myself to them to say, stop your services.
Commissioner Spies, I think that speaks to paragraph 46 of your statement. Might I then refer you to what you make reference to as annexure RS213, which appears on the file that you should have in front of you, file 2 of 4, page 345. Can you speak to the document there, please? What is that document?
That's correct, Commissioner. That's the letter that I then sent to Gubis 85 Solutions on the 24th of June, where I say stoppage of ad hoc services which have not been approved in terms of any written process. The above matter bears reference. Kindly take note that all the sites mentioned on the attached Annexure A were identified by the Tshwane Metro Police as the sites belonging to the Department of Water, on which ad hoc security services are being rendered without any approval based on written process. Therefore, the Tshwane Metro Police Department has taken a decision to stop these services with effect from the 1st of July 25. To this effect, you are hereby requested not to continue deploying security on all the sites listed on the Annexure A, and your cooperation in this will be regarded. This letter is actually, it's the one that is, so I sent a letter to them, but the very next day they sent this letter back to me as received. And they then made a lot of attachments that they added to that letter as well.
Before you go there, Commissioner Spies, just so that we align, you testified earlier on that you issued instructions on the 12th of March.
Correct.
To Director Malaji to say that no more deployment. Obviously, one would accept then that by the fact that in June you are sending another letter, or at least you are sending a letter to Gubis. There is a suggestion that what you had said or instructed to happen had not happened. That's one. But also secondly, it seems to, when you look at paragraph 3 of that letter, it would seem that you have a new effective date, which is now July, so how do you align all of those three elements that I've just reflected?
As I stated, is that we already knew in the department that January and February and half of March was already being processed, and it was instructed in its past tense. We cannot change what happened in the past. And that's why at the April, the May, and the beginning of June, we were still thinking it's the payments of those months that has already been done that is now being processed, because payments are always late. The June payments, close to this 24th of June, in that middle of June, the payments came in again. And the person from finance then said to me, but here's the same amount of that, and then it triggered, but March should have been a half month. It shouldn't be a full month. And that's when I queried with Malaji to say, but I've told you on the 12th of March already to stop this. Why is a full payment still coming through? And that's when the conversation started with that he is alleging that he doesn't listen to my instructions via email. I must do it in writing for that, which I then did in writing. And part of that is the reason I gave 1 July is because their tender will, in terms of the contract, their tender will end in any case on 30 June, so that they can finish this 2 or 3 days that they are busy, because it's now clear that they were still running services in June. And that's why the dates is dated like that.
Thank you. Then let's deal with the response from Gubis to your letter, and that you canvass at paragraph 47 of your statement.
So, on the 26th of June, I then received the email from this company with the email address of info@gubis85.co.za, and the electronic mail was signed off by Calvin Maslangu. But there's then, together with this letter, which I've just indicated here, they've also attached a lot of attachments. The one is they sent my own letter back to me. They've sent me the original award letter that they were issued to them in 2022. They've sent a report through to me of their services rendered, and then they attached a file called deployment. And they stated that they had written instruction to deploy, which none of us in the department knew they had. I then looked at this on the 26th. I looked at this deployment list only, and I went through this list, and I think it's 43 pages of deployments that was done. It's all these sites, the total at the end of the day, the 43 sites. There's an individual page for every deployment. I scanned through that, and I noticed that the deployments were done by Inspector Piri, who did the deployments. So I scanned in the beginning a few, and then right at the end again, and I saw it's Inspector Piri that deployed these sites. And
Commissioner Spies, apologies for interrupting you. Can we, so that we can follow and the Commission can also have a proper understanding, can you go to page 382 on the same file, 2 of 4? Can you confirm that this document is part of, are you there?
yes.
Can you confirm that this document is part of the annexures that you received from Gubis 85 Solutions when they responded to your, what we call a stoppage letter?
Correct. This, from 382 to 424, is the list of letters that was in the electronic PDF file stated deployment of officers, of guards. And this is the, which I quickly scanned through, and I saw that it was signed off at the bottom. You can see that for any inquiries on this matter, please contact Lebogang Piri. And then there's a signature, and it's a Mr. A.L. Piri. And then next to it is PIN number and Inspector Piri. So I scanned through this right up to the end. And initially I noted that everything is according to me, signed by Mr. Piri. So my initial thought was everything was Mr. Piri. And I must state that this page 8, I say page 18, but 18 in the report. Two of the files is not Mr. Piri, but it's a page, in my PDF it's 18 and 19. I'm just trying to find them. Sorry.
That's fine. We'll get to those two. What I need you to explain
Do you
is
want-
that
Sorry to interrupt you. The one on page 400, Commissioner Spies, is it one of the two that you were referring to? 399 and 400. They seem to be the two that were not signed by Piri.
That's correct, Commissioner. So in my in the document that came from Gubis 85, it's one document with 43 pages, and page 18 and 19 is then page 399 and page 400, which has been signed off by Dr. K.E. Marislava.
Yeah.
The rest is Inspector Piri that have signed it off. And as I stated, is that they sent this back to me to say that, but we had written permission to proceed with it. And when they sent this to me and I looked at it, I replied back to them to say, but in any case, your contract ends the 30th. So stop the services, even if you had this and that. I didn't say anything further to them about this. What I then did is, this is the first time that us and even the department, I even spoke to Deputy Commissioner Boles about it, none of us knew that these letters were issued. And I looked at these letters, and Inspector Piri, in terms of command and control, in our ranking structure, if you go from the bottom up, you have a constable, sergeant, inspector, then a superintendent, lieutenant colonel, colonel, brigadier, which is the director level, and the deputy chief level. Inspector Piri, in my mind, and at that moment in time, is way too low to authorize any expenditure or even to deploy. According to my understanding of the SLA and the award letters, it should have been Director Malaji that did this. So I then immediately, when I got this letter, I forwarded this whole package, this whole email, to GAR, which is our Group Audit and Risk Department, Mr. Mafamane Baloy. And I said to him, can you please investigate this urgently? It looks like it is either fraudulently issued or it's incorrectly issued, and that. Mr. Baloy then responded to me about a week later, and he stated to me that there's enough evidence against Inspector Piri that we can start and proceed with consequence management against him. And the moment I received that mail...
Commissioner Spies,
Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think we just one step ahead. I suppose the question is, Inspector Piri, could he issue those instructions under the authority of Mr. Malaji? Is it possible?
Inspector Piri has been assigned, he's a Metro Police officer that's been assigned to the APSS, the Asset Protection Security Services, as a regional supervisor. And in that turn, he reports as a regional supervisor, he reports to then Senior Superintendent Marislava, who's now a Colonel Marislava. But he reported to Colonel Marislava, Colonel Maslangu, Reginald Maslangu, and to Director Malachi. So that is the direct line of command between them. And as I stated already, Inspector Piri should not have at all the authority to deploy this. If he deployed it, it's either under the direct instruction of Director Malachi, who was in any case wrong, because it should have been Director Malachi who issued the instruction.
Before we go to the steps that you took, Commissioner Spies, can you just explain to the Commission? Remember, we have a situation here where at least the Commission knows at the back that there are conversations between Sergeant Nkosi, Mr. Gareth Munisi, and Umashi Lamini. That we know between January and February. And now we have purchase orders that were also reflective of February transactions that were loaded up. And then thirdly, we have a list that was attached to an email to you by Mr. Umashi Dlamini listing the allocation of ad hoc work and specifically dealing with January and February. And now to add to that, there is this document, okay, provided to you that seems to suggest to us, at least when I look at it, it's allocation of work for at least from page 382, starting with January 2025, albeit we might have issues as to who issued those instructions, whether Piri would have had the necessary authority to do so. But when you put all of those four factors together, can you tell us if do you want to comment on that? Perhaps that's the best way to give you an opportunity to comment.
If I base it on the dates that I received, obviously this is speaking in hindsight because I only received this on the 26th of June. But the purchase orders that I now know was all created in March 6. But the deployment letters was already created in 14 January. It's completely wrong way around. Normally there would have been, the correct procedure would have been, there would have been a risk assessment. There would then have been a deployment with a purchase order to say we need to deploy extra people. A purchase order would be generated and then the deployment letter will follow. It wouldn't be the other way around. It's as if this was created on 14 January already and then in March, here by the 6th of 4th, 5th, 6th March, suddenly a large amount of purchase orders was created to align with these letters that was then issued on 14 January already. And we discovered it then on 26 June when it was sent back to us to say, but we have written permission to do this. It's not that we have not written permission. But it must also be stated that Inspector Piri, and I've stated many times, he's at the inspector level with zero authority to deploy. His function as a regional supervisor, monitoring the guards and monitoring that the function is actually done. He doesn't have deployment authority at all.
Just to be sure about what you're saying in your explanation, the letter, the one letter is dated the 14th of January 2025. That's the one at page 382. And I'm just using it as an example, the date. It's the 14th of January 2025. You say the purchase order fits in where in terms of date? Does it come after this kind of letter or does it come before this kind of letter?
The purchase order was created after this letter on 6th of March.
No, we know that. We know as a fact that it was created on the 6th of March. What I'm asking is the sequence of dates. Is that how it works? That a purchase order comes after this kind of deployment letter, or is it the other way around?
It is the other way around.
Okay.
You must first do the risk assessment. Now in the process as well, you must first do the risk assessment. After the risk assessment, if it is then necessary to deploy, there will then be a purchase order created for that deployment, and then the deployment will take place.
Okay, thank you.
Then,
these deployment letters, if you just look at the one on page 420, they don't say for how long the deployment is. So you are just deployed to a site with effect from they give a date and time. But then they don't say, for example, that it's going to be a month or it's going to be for 2 months. So it's an open-ended deployment until it is withdrawn.
Correct, Commissioner. Which is not correct.
For ad hoc services, that is improper because you're effectively giving an evergreen mandate if you don't put an end date to it.
That is correct, Commissioner. That is why initially when I stated as well as ad hoc services is an emergency deployment for a specific reason, for a specific period. Ad hoc services is not a open-ended and off we go. So this process is definitely wrong.
I'm indebted, Commissioner Khumalo. Commissioner Spies, you were then engaging the Commission on the steps that you then took, having discovered or received the email from Gubis with the annexures, and you deal with that at paragraph 51 or 50 to 50, let's take it to 52 of your statement.
That is correct, Commissioners. I obviously, as I already stated, I sent this email plus all the attachments. I've sent it to Mr. Mafamani Baloyi for investigation. As I already stated, Director Malaji was appointed as the project manager, and he had to deal with all aspects of this tender, and an inspector does not have the authority to deploy or incur any cost on behalf of the city. Mr. Baloyi has replied to me later that stated he believes there's enough evidence that consequence management can be initiated, and I then forwarded his email plus all the evidence to Brigadier Minnar. He's the head of our internal affairs within the Metro Police, with a request for it to be investigated and then consequence management to be instituted. Brigadier Minnar appointed a Freddie Tshwane from the internal affairs section to do the investigation. And then at a much later stage, about a month later, Mr. Tshwane approached me informally and said to me that he cannot conclude this investigation. He has done a lot of legwork, but he couldn't conclude it as it's extremely technical. He also cannot obtain internal evidence and more evidentiary proof. It's one of the challenges we have as a Metro Police Department, is that when it becomes obvious that it's criminal, it becomes a criminal matter, and we don't have criminal investigative powers, and no one in the city will allow us to actually go and scratch for information and get it, because some of these, you need to get the real information. And he then said to me what should he do with this investigation, because he came to a dead end. I suggested to him that he write a closeout report on the investigation to his Brigadier Minnar and his Deputy Chief, because it's in internal affairs, it falls under Commissioner Umasi Dlamini. That's where the section resides. So I suggested to him that he write a closeout report where whatever he's saying to me now is that he stated in his closeout report, and he request and recommend that the report be referred back to Group Audit Risk, that they appoint a forensic company so that it could be forensically properly investigated. At the same time when this happened, he then went out, and I then reported the matter to the Hawks, Colonel Livian Maseko, which is the head of Pretoria Hawks. I reported it to him to say, we've got a criminal matter here, which to me looks more and more criminal, and it's not now just an administrative problem anymore. And our internal affairs, we cannot investigate it further. It's now going to be referred to a forensic audit. Can you please, from the Hawks' perspective, also investigate this matter? And then when we get to paragraph 52, this only came to my knowledge last week on the 10th of March, is that I was under the impression that the report was closed out, it was sent to GAR for investigation, and that a forensic company has been appointed. Because during this period, in the last 2-3 months, forensic auditors and forensic companies did approach me to get information and take statements from me regarding this process. So my impression was that this report is actually the one that they're busy investigating. But then on the 10th of March, Brigadier Minnar forwarded an email to me when he said to me, sorry DC, I didn't originally CC you, because on the 30th of July, Brigadier Minnar sent the report that the investigator Freddie Tshwane has done together with his recommendations. Brigadier Minnar sent it to Deputy Commissioner Dlamini to say to him, DC, here's our report, with a recommendation that it be forwarded through the Chief's office to GAR. It got stuck there, it never went further than that. And on the 10th of March, when I started to query and to say, actually I started the week before, because the forensic investigators were with me, and I mentioned then this report, and they're like, no, but we investigate the same matter from another avenue, it's not from that report. And when I went back to Brigadier Minnar, he sent his email to me to say, no, here's a report, I have sent it to my Deputy Chief, I omitted to include you in the original one. And then I said to him, can you please make sure that immediately get to GAR because it's critical for the current investigation. And I was then informed by the Chief of Police the very next morning when we discussed it. She said, no, she's already signed off on the report. It is with Group Audit now at the moment.
Commissioner, should that date not be 2026, the 10 March?
Sorry, Commissioner. I did correct it last night, but it is 2026. It was last week, Monday.
Thank you, Commissioner Khumalo. Perhaps while we are there, can we then go to this investigative report? That will appear on file 4, the small file. And that will be page 993. Did you find it, Commissioner Spies?
Yes.
Thank you. For the record, what is that document?
This is the report that was then sent to me on the original email on 10th of March 2026, but it's the report that Brigadier Minnar has then submitted, and it's dated 29 July 25, but it was attached to the email of 30 July 2025 to Commissioner Dlamini.
Could you please, for the record, read the subject matter of that report in the introduction?
The subject matter was the Metro Police Inspector issuing written instruction to deploy ad hoc guards beyond his mandate. And the letter then in the introduction portion, it specifically stated that on 27 June, this directorate received allegations to investigate against Inspector Piri for issuing written instructions to Gubis 85 Security Solution to deploy ad hoc guards, which is way beyond his mandate.
And then, unless the chairperson wants you to read the entire report, I would direct you
Please not.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would then direct you to page 996, where we deal with the challenges, and then after that, the conclusion of that report.
Under point 4 challenges, the investigation is unable to test the allegation against 22 companies to establish whether Inspector Piri issued the instruction to all the service providers to deploy ad hoc guards. And as noted, we only have this file from Gubis coming back to us to say, no, but we have, here is the 43 list. He also stated then unable to interview Director Malaji. The reason was Director Malaji has then already been suspended from our service, and he's unable to conduct background check on members of Gubis 85 Solution and the City of Tshwane officials. We don't have access to make a link there for it. And we unable to interview or obtain statements from Inspector Piri. He refused, and he couldn't get hold of him at all to actually do this. And he could also not confirm with SAPS if there were any cases against the city by Gubis 85 Solution for work done or any litigations. And he was also unable to source the standard operating procedure for compliance purposes, and he was unable to source full financial records for the content of this memo. And then he made the conclusion, which is aligned to what I say, but the allegations submitted have substance and indicate a possible crime of fraud and corruption. However, a thorough forensic investigation would be more suitable to indicate cost to the municipality and all the employees involved of misconduct, because at that stage, even though it shows towards Piri, it could be the whole